Excellent. Hello, everybody. All right, this is becoming tradition. I want us to all stand up and give a high five, but I want to hear the loudest pop. Come on, let's get some pop high fives going. Come on. I'm listening. I'm hearing some slaps. Oh, I like it. Nice. Perfect. All right, you can grab your seats. Awesome. I was at I run a business prayer group every Monday. At lunchtime we have half an hour. A bunch of us business people get together, and we have this prayer meeting. And my dad was at this meeting last week, and he made this comment. He said, we all have a message within us. Something that is just common throughout your life. It's the kind of the message that you keep going back to. And my dad said, Daniel, he pointed me out, and he said, Daniel's message that he always seems to go back to is faith, family, and business. So, I'm sorry, but you're going to get my message tonight. That's just how it is, because that's what is inside me. So I hope that's okay. So let's get straight into it. So have you ever worked really, really hard to create the good life for your family or for yourself? So you've been saving, you're doing all the right things, you're ticking all the right boxes, but you just feel like you're missing it. Is there anyone else who has felt like that sometimes? I know that I have. And I'm not talking about a bad day, I'm not talking about a tough week, I'm talking about that feeling when you're providing, you're working hard, you're doing the long hours, you're doing all the things that you think you should be doing, and yet you're still not really present. You're not happy. You're not there. So I want to tell you about the story about the time that I realized I was that guy. My daughter is 4 now, I think. Wait, yes, she is 4. She's almost 5. She's very close. I was like, oh, whoops. So she's almost 4. But about a year ago, or just over a year ago, we were reading a book on the couch at home. And it was, what was it called? I wrote it down. The Secret Garden. Does anyone know what The Secret Garden is? It's like a classic, all right? But we weren't reading a chapter book because that's a little bit beyond my child. But we were reading the picture book with all the watercolors. It was a very beautiful book with very pretty pictures. And we're sitting on the couch and we're reading through it. And my daughter started asking me a question about Mary's slippers that were sitting next to her bed. It was a simple question. It only required a 2-second answer. And she asked me once, and then she asked me twice, and then she asked me a 3rd time. She asked me 4 times, and I'm ashamed to admit she asked me 5 times. It was not a good thing. And here's the thing, I was reading the book, but I wasn't there. I had a client, and they just got some news about some government change, which was basically completely decimating their business. And they had about 3 months before they were going to go insolvent, they were going to lose staff, there's a bunch of things that was just going down. And I was just sitting there doing the numbers in my head of how am I going to help these guys figure out this situation. And so I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm not actually on the couch at all. I'm still in my office doing the calculations, doing the numbers, trying to figure out what's going on. And my beautiful wife, Madeline, she doesn't yell, which is worse. She just says really quietly, Daniel, are you going to answer her? She's asked you 5 times. And who knows the look? That look, yeah, if you're married, you know what that look is. I got that look. Wasn't angry, but disappointed. And it's funny because I'd done everything right that night. Everything right. I was at home at 5. I work at home, so that's helpful. I was downstairs from my office at 5. I was at the table. We were eating our dinner. I asked my kids how they were. I did the bedtime routine. We did the baths. We did the prayers. We did the cleaning up, all that kind of stuff. I was there reading the book. I was tick, 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 tick. But I wasn't actually there. I was providing for my family, but I wasn't present with my family. I was in every moment that we were doing all of those things, but I wasn't in the room. And that night I had to ask myself, I'd been thinking about for a while, is providing for my family more important than actually being present with them? Because I was providing, but I wasn't present. So tonight I want to talk about two words that sound really similar, but they actually build two completely different lives. The first one is inheritance, and the second one is heritage. And I want to start with a guy who's 75 years old, he has no kids, and God turns up and says something, honestly, I think is just a little bit crazy. So in Genesis 12, there's this guy called Abram, and he's 75, he's got no children, and God shows up and says, leave your country, leave your father's household, leave everything you know, and go to a land I'll show you. So he doesn't tell him where, he says, just go, I'll let you know on the way. Now imagine if I went home to my wife and said, God's told me we need to go. Where are we going? I don't know, get in the car, we'll figure it out on the way. God says to go. It would be a bit of a crazy situation, right? Imagine that situation. That conversation wouldn't go down well. And then God makes him a promise. He says, I'll make you into a great nation. I'll bless you and you will be a blessing and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now, I want you to notice something that God doesn't say. He doesn't say, Abram, I'm going to bless you so that you can finally relax. Dang it. That's what we really want, isn't it? I just want to relax. He doesn't say, I'm going to make you comfortable. He says, I'm going to bless you so that you become a blessing to everyone, to nations, to people that you will never meet. So God doesn't just bless him, he blesses him to be a blessing. And so the blessing was never meant to stop with Abraham. It was meant to flow through him. There's a verse that a lot of us business guys really like. It's in Proverbs chapter 13, verses 22. It says, a good man leaves us an inheritance to his children's children, grandkids. And we read that and go, yep, that's me. I'm going to build a big pile enough that I can leave, that it reaches the grandkids. Now, your grandkids, you'll probably meet them, but it's the ones after them that I want you to think about it. Your great-grandkids and their kids, generations you will never lay your eyes on and that you'll never meet. Because here's the thing, you can hand something you'll never meet, a bank account, but you can't expect it to mean anything. Money gets spent, but what actually reaches that far down the line, 3, 4, 5 generations, isn't money, it's something else. So what do I actually mean by heritage? I've used this word a few times now, and heritage so the inheritance is the easy one. Inheritance is the stuff, the money, the house, the assets, what's left in your bank account when you're gone. You can write it down on a piece of paper, but heritage is something bigger, and you can't put that in a will. Heritage is the values, it's the faith, it's the way of living, it's your story. It's who your family is and what they stand for. It's the stuff that keeps getting passed down long after the money's been spent. And here's the thing I really want you to catch is that heritage runs in two different directions. We are all receiving a heritage whether we like it or not. There is a heritage that has come before us that we've received, and then there is the heritage that we're building that we're going to pass on to those who go after us. And what the interesting thing is that for a lot of us, the people who left the deepest mark in our lives weren't necessarily mum and dad. It was a grandparent. It was an auntie. It was an uncle. It was a teacher who believed in you when nobody else did. It was a coach or a boss or a youth leader who encouraged you and inspired you. It was someone who lived a life of integrity and compassion and courage. And just by knowing them, by being near them, you caught something that left a mark on you that you're still carrying today. So none of us started from zero. We've all received something. We've all received a heritage from other people, both good and bad. A way of seeing the world, a way of managing money, a way of having relationships, a way of living out your faith. That's a heritage. So you've received a heritage, but then there's the heritage that you're choosing to build and to pass on to others. And this is the thing I want you to understand, is that whether you are in a family or whether you're not in a family, you are still living and passing on a heritage to other people. You know, this I was saying this morning, this church, this family right here is giving a heritage to my children. You know, you might be here and you might think, well, I'm not, I don't have a family the way that you're talking about a family, Daniel. Well, if you're in this place and you come to this church, you are a part of a family because you're part of this family and you are influencing my children. And I care about that. So it's important for you to understand, what heritage are you passing on? And I said this morning, that's what I love about Sammy and Jono, is that my kids absolutely love Sammy and Jono. And poor Sammy can't even worship on a Sunday night without my daughter trying to get her attention. But in saying that, I also love that, because there's something that's in Sammy and Jono that's getting passed on to my kids. So every one of us is standing in the middle of a stream, receiving from the people before us and then passing on something to people after us. The only question is whether we're doing it on purpose or whether we're doing it by accident. So let me show you what happens when two families answer that same question in completely different ways. Same opportunity, same kind of blessing, but completely different endings. So it's a little bit like the 12 spies I spoke about a few weeks ago. The same giants, but a totally different response. So this time it's two families and a whole lot of money. So the first family is the Vanderbilts. Has anyone heard about the Vanderbilts? Yes, a few of us? Okay. So the Vanderbilts, in 1877, Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man in America. He took a $100 loan off his mum and turned it into a fortune worth $200 billion in today's money. So that's railroads, shipping, like industry, like the whole lot that's going on in America. And then when he died, within 2 generations of his grandkids, they turned spending into a competitive sport. They bought mansions, they bought yachts. One of them built a 70-room summer cottage, a 70-room holiday house. Who could do with a 70-room holiday house? I don't know what you do with a 70-room holiday house. That's just mental. Another imported 500,000 cubic feet of Italian marble for a place they literally called the Marble House. And these weren't homes. These were like expensive attempts to work their way into a society, to a rich old society that they weren't accepted into. And nobody sat down with them and said, here's what this money is actually for. They just assumed it would always be there. And this is the crazy part. In 1973, 120 Vanderbilts had a family reunion. $200 billion worth of family, and not one of them was a millionaire. 3 generations, and they'd pretty much lost it all. So they left an inheritance, but they never built a heritage. And money with no mission behind them is just fuel waiting for a fire. But there's a second family, which is really cool. 50 years earlier, over in Birmingham, England, there's a young man named John Cadbury who likes chocolate. Come on, somebody. So good. He was a Quaker. So a Quaker was a type of Christian. And one of the things about the Quakers was that they had a really high value for that every person had inherent worth. That was really important. So they were a big part of the abolishment of slavery movement that went through the UK. And the Cadbury family, especially John Cadbury, was a big part of that. And so he had an interest in drinking chocolate because he was watching how alcohol was destroying the people, and especially the men in the UK. And so what he thought was, if I can create a drinking chocolate, maybe they'll substitute the drinking chocolate for the alcohol. And so he opened a little shop And then when his sons were old enough, started to step back, and his two sons, Richard and George, take over the business. And they are just coming into the industrial age, right? So this is when they're building mines, this is when they're building factories, and they're doing all the basically sweatshops, child labor, like the whole lot's going on at this point. And they come to a point where they have to decide how they're going to grow. And they have the option to do what everyone else is doing, which is to cut corners, cut staff, exploit workers, or build something completely different that actually blesses people. And so what they decided is, while their competitors were all building sweatshops, what they decided to do is they went out into the countryside and they found and they bought land outside the city and they built a village. So not just a factory, they built all the houses to support the workers who were going to work in their factory. They also built houses, they built gardens, they built parks, they built schools, they built sports fields, and they called it a factory in a garden. And it worked in ways that were really, really interesting. So the kids growing up in that village were on average 2 to 3 inches taller and 8 pounds heavier than the kids in the city, because they had clean air, space, and decent housing. And infant mortality in Birmingham was double what it was in their village. So they were literally keeping babies alive by blessing the workers that would work in their factories. And then in 1900, George Cadbury did something really interesting. He took the whole estate, 330 acres, which had more than 300 cottages, and he gave it away into a trust. Not as a tax dodge, but for working families. He decided that this was going to be something that he was going to leave behind for that community and not for his own wealth. So here you've got two families. You've got the Vanderbilts on the one side, who've built mansions and monuments to themselves, and then you've got the Cadburys, who've built a village which is a blessing for other people. And here's the interesting thing, is that the Vanderbilts' mansions are all museums now. They're all dead things. They don't do anything, and people just get to walk around and look at some, pretty buildings. But for the Cadburys, the Cadbury village, which is called Bournville, it's still there. It's still alive. It still has families in it. It's still full of life, and people are still being impacted by the community and the village that they built 125 years later. And that was through 5 generations of Cadbury family working in the Cadbury business. Now, before you switch off thinking, this must be just a story for people with lots of money, it's actually not, because it's interesting that the greatest heritage that we have is a man who lived in a tent 4,000 years ago, who just did what God asked him to do. And 4,000 years later, we're here in this room because he chose to obey God, go on a walk, and see where God would take him. In fact, it's not even about the money, because if you go generations after, they went through a drought. They had to travel to Egypt just to find food. So it's not about the money. It's about what is God creating in you that you're going to then pass on. He left a covenant, a promise, an identity, a way of living, and a family that knew who they were and whose they were. And that heritage shaped nations for 4,000 years. The thing that reaches down generationally isn't the money, it's who you were, lived out so clearly and so consistently that your grandkids and their kids are the ones that after them carry that into rooms that you'll never walk into. Now, I told you about the bedtime story, but during that season, that wasn't the only thing I was doing wrong. Oh dear. The things you learn in the early years of marriage, am I right? When we were in that early stages, I'd started my business and it was going awesome, and I was, building my business. I had clients and I was traveling and it was going really well. And we had 2 little kids by that point. I think we just had our second. And things were going great for me. My wife, she was still trying to work out how to work and have kids. She was doing Zoom meetings with clients while Luca was trying to have his nap, and who knows, that never goes well. They never nap when you want them to nap. And so for me, things were working out really, really well, but for Maddie, it really wasn't. And what ended up happening is we started kind of drifting. We were kind of doing our own things for a while because I was so focused on building the business because I was trying to provide, and my wife was just focusing on keeping these little kids alive and not dying, right? And in that moment, we're just kind of living slightly different lives, and we're just kind of drifting off doing different things. And then something happened where it caused us both to stop, where we had a miscarriage. And grief has a funny way of stopping everything and making you have a conversation that you weren't expecting to have. We were just ignoring it. We just didn't think about it. We just thought this was normal. This is what every family goes through. And then we go through a situation like that, and you're sitting there and you're just going, oh, this isn't right. Like, what's going on here? And I remember sitting on the end of our bed, and Maddie looked at me and basically said, Daniel, if we keep going the way that we're going, this isn't going to be good for our marriage. We're going to keep drifting apart. And she was right. And so we made a decision that changed everything. We decided that we weren't going to build 2 lives. We were going to start building one. One family, one mission, one life. Now, I know for some of you might think, oh yeah, that's kind of common sense. Well, it is common sense when you're doing it, right? But sometimes you don't know. You kind of drift and you don't see it happening. And sometimes you need that intentional moment where you go, no, this is going to change. We're going to do this differently. And what I didn't expect, so I thought that meant that I was going to have to compromise. I was living my best life, I'll be honest, right? I was like, business, travel, all of this stuff. And I was like, this is great. This is awesome. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to sacrifice more. I'm going to have to compromise more. I'm going to have to be at home more. I'm going to have to do all of these things so that Maddie can, pursue what she wants and live the life that she's wanting to live and live a kind of like this awkward middle ground where we're both sacrificed and neither of us are very happy, right? That's kind of the picture I had of what we were going to have to walk into. But what actually happened was because we understood together what we were trying to achieve together, Maddie had a revelation of who she wanted to be able to achieve that was different to what I was doing. So what she decided to do was she said, well, instead of trying to build and trying to work her job and create more income for us, she goes, no, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus in on our family. I'm going to focus on our culture. I'm going to focus on teaching our kids. I'm going to focus on doing the things around our family and our ministry life that's actually going to strengthen the foundation of what we're doing in our home. And what was really interesting in that is that as she did that, I don't know if you know this actually, but Maddie's kind of a big deal. Kind of. She started an Instagram where she would just start sharing the crafts that she would make for our kids. And all of a sudden, she's getting millions of views. She's got like 30,000 followers following her. And she has people from all over the world, from the Philippines to Africa to America to India, who are sending her photos of these kids teachers who are using the crafts that she created in her home that are teaching these kids about who Jesus is, the gospel, and applying the Bible to kids' lives all over the world. Now, if she hadn't have taken that step back and said, okay, well, how can I contribute to this vision as one family, she may not have ever done that. And she may never have seen what God could do in her life when she was doing what God wanted her to do. And by doing that, it freed me up to focus more on my business, and God blessed that. And I think that was the thing that was so amazing, is that we got aligned together about what God wanted to do in our family. We both took our different roles, and God just opened massive doors for the both of us. But I do recognize that we live in a world where households are becoming less important in our society. Because we're living in a society where we're saying that individually we need to achieve, it's more about consumption than it is about contribution, right? So we're living in a life where it's like it's all about me. We get into these relationships and it's about me. We even in marriages these days, it's very much can be so much more about what can I get out of this relationship, rather than thinking about what can we contribute together out of this relationship, right? And as soon as we started to change our thinking, it changed our world. But you might be here today, as I said before, and you don't have that family dynamic, and that's totally okay. But I still think it's important that you be a part of a household. Now, this church is a type of household. It's a place where you can come and you can contribute. You can be a part of a family. You can receive the support that you would normally get in a nuclear family, because we here are committing to each other, to support each other, to encourage each other, to challenge each other, and to do more together than we can do alone. Because God didn't just bless you, he blessed you to be a blessing. And when we get together we get that revelation that God has blessed us together, we can be a greater blessing together as well. So what do we actually do with that? And here's the good thing. You don't need 330 acres and a village. You just need a dinner table. You don't need a village. You need a dinner table. Here's what I've learned, and I'm saying this as a very imperfect husband and dad who still checks his emails during bath time and still feels bad about it, is that heritage doesn't get built on a stage like this. It doesn't get built by a big business exit where you've made a lot of money. It gets built in the moments that feel like an ordinary Tuesday. It's the prayer before bed. It's the Friday night pizza and a movie with your kids. It's the conversation with your partner after you've put your kids down. No, how are you really? And then actually shutting up to listen to the answer. It's your daughter watching you choose her over your phone. And it's your son watching you give generously even when money's tight. That's where heritage gets built, one ordinary Tuesday at a time. And that table might be a table of 5, or it could be a couple of housemates. It could be just you guys in the same house, just working together. Everybody's got a table. So I want to give you 3 simple things that you can start doing tonight. Number 1 is presence. How about one night this week? I know this is going to be really hard for some of you. What if, when you finish work, you turned off your phone for one whole night? Whoa. Honestly, I get like anxiety just thinking about that, right? But it's so important, right? Like, just start off by putting your phone aside and just deciding to be present, being present with your kids, being present with your partner, being present with your housemates, being present with God. Who knows how hard prayer is sometimes, especially when there's a phone to distract us, right? The first thing we can do is be intentional about being present in where we are. The second thing is to have real conversations with someone you're doing life with. If you're married, that's your spouse. And maybe you need to ask this question that we had to ask, which is, are we building this life together, or are we building separate lives? Or maybe it's just you and your housemate. It's just going, hey, like, how are you doing really? What's really going on? How can I help? How can I encourage and support you in this season? And number 3, and this is the big one, ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, what would the people I love actually remember? Not what they would inherit, what would they actually remember? What did I pass on? And then start building a life that answers that question well. And the last thing I'd really encourage you to do is just to write down a mission statement for your family or for yourself or for your household. Something that you can hold on to when things are hard, when things are difficult, or you're just like, things are a bit crazy. For our family, we came up with the phrase, we love others the way that God has loved us, and we bless others the way that God has blessed us. And we decided that was the statement. So that's what we pray every night with our kids. I'm hoping that eventually they'll memorize it. We haven't got that far yet. But that's who we are. That's who we've decided what it means to be a Lauridsen. So let me bring it home. 2 families, the Vanderbilts and the Cadburys, both rich, both gone from the stage of success in history. One left mansions that became museums, and the other left a village that's still full of life. And every one of us is choosing right now, in 1,000 ordinary decisions, what we're going to be as well. Inheritance or heritage. One is what you leave, the other is what you build, and you don't get to choose whether you'll be remembered, but you will get to choose how you'll be remembered. So let's all pray. God, I just thank you that you invited a man 4,000 years ago to go on a walk into a place that he'd never seen before, with a promise that through him, the nations of the world would be blessed. And through that man, you also brought a man who was your son, Jesus, that would change the world as we know it. And Lord, I just thank you that we all are here directly impacted and directly blessed by that story. Lord, I thank you for the peace that we can have with you, Lord, as we follow you and obey you and listen to your voice, Lord. And I pray if there's anyone here that does not have that peace, Lord, I just pray right now that you would meet them where they're at. As they search for that peace, Lord, would you meet them right now? Would you speak to them? Would you let them know that you love them with all of your heart, the same way that you love all of us in this room? And Lord, I thank you that you also have a purpose for every single person in this room. I thank you that you have a call, you have a message, you have an intention for every person in this room. And Lord, for each one of us that may be struggling with that and not sure what that looks like and what that means, Lord God, I just thank you that you are placing little opportunities in ordinary Tuesdays in their life right now where they can just be a blessing to others. And so, Lord, we just honor you and we praise you. And Lord, I pray for every person who is maybe feeling a little bit lonely right now, Lord. Lord, I thank you that you have built churches all over the world where those people can come and they can find community, they can find connection, they can find a relationship with you, but they can also find a relationship with other believers who can encourage them and support them, and that we're together, we can do so much more than we can do alone. Lord, we just honor you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We have a couple of moments for some questions. Can we thank Dan before we kick off with those? It's good to be social distancing right now. We're about to have a Fijian feast in a moment, but before that, we're going to just ask a couple of questions. So Dan, just say tonight, as a student, how do I apply these principles now to give me a head start for later?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that we are all part of households. I remember when I first came over to Australia, I went to Adelaide, and Adelaide's a really interesting city because it's a really family-oriented city. So I felt real awkward because I was on my own in the city. I didn't really know anybody. And I just started inviting myself over to people's houses. And I remember I was literally going to have Christmas alone, and I was like, I can't have Christmas alone. That's so sad. And so I just kind of found some people that I'd started connecting with, and was like, the hint, hint, nudge, nudge. What are you guys doing for Christmas? And then did
you go, oh, I'm not doing anything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to be starving. Because in Adelaide they close everything as well. So anyway, so I guess what I would encourage people to do is just to be a part of something, be a part of a household. And that's why I say with church, it's such a great household to be a part of, where you can still contribute to something. And I believe that the church is also a very... God uses family and church as almost interchangeable in terms of what they should look like. And so I think being in a church is such a healthy way before you start building your family for yourself as well.
Next question. Thank you. That's great. What if you're in a household that is not on the same page as you in regards to those kind of ideals? How do you outwork this, trying to leave a heritage when you just feel like you're on opposite page to the other people in your household?
First of all, that's hard. It is really hard. I think for us, the first step is to find common ground. Assuming that it's a healthy environment and assuming that it is like a good place to be. I think we can all find common ground. I think there's a lot of people that are not believers, and they don't necessarily believe what I believe, but I think we can find the same thing, the commonalities of we actually want to be nice to other people, we want to be kind, we want to help people. And if that's not true, what I've also found is that sometimes you taking the initiative, you taking that step of leadership is actually what brings other people on that journey. Sometimes you want to be the person who follows the leader in doing some of these things, but sometimes you also have to be that leader as well. And being that leader is what actually opens the door for the rest of your family as well.
Great. How do we guard against individualism, just no matter what our phase? If we're single, if we're on different pages, how do we guard against that individualism?
So the thing that, one of the things that really changed Maddie and I's perspective on family, we read a book called Family Revision by a guy called Jeremy Pryor, and his whole argument was that we needed to go back to seeing the family as a team. In modern society, we see family as like a platform for everyone to kind of go off and do their own different things. And he was saying that for most of history, family has always been the thing that was a team. It was like, that was what you passed on. It was the resources, it was the knowledge, it was the experiences. And it's kind of funny how even today half of the stuff our grandparents knew, we don't even know today because we've kind of just disconnected from it. But he was making the argument that we need to start seeing ourselves as a collective, as a team. And I think that was the thing that really shifted our perspective of going, okay, if we're a team, what sport are we playing and what are the goalposts? How do we score tries or score goals? What are the rules or the boundaries, the rules of the game that we're playing? And what we realize is we get to set some of those. Some of those are set for us, but we also get to set those boundaries. So for us in our family, we okay, we're a team. What sport are we playing together? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? And what are the boundaries that we're going to set for ourselves that we're going to achieve that? So I think it was a bit of a paradigm perspective of going, no, we're not going to live just for ourselves. We're actually going to live as a team. And me winning is you winning, and you winning is me winning. And I think that's a very different kind of perspective that really helped us to build that insight of how to live not just for yourself.
Beautiful. You mentioned it flows to us and flows from us. What do we do if we have a heritage of trauma?
The thing that I would say is you get to be the person that can stop that. My family, my dad is one of my heroes, and my pop was not a good man. he was a bad man, to put it, just reality. And he went to prison, and he did a lot of dumb things. And so my dad had to do a lot of things to ensure that heritage did not get passed on to me and my brother and sister. And it's not easy. In fact, it's possibly one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But that's why it's so important, you know. And so I do feel for anyone that's in that experience where they've had a bad experience before, and then they're trying to work out what they're going to do for the next generation. But all I can say is that you get a choice, what heritage you pass on, and the battles that you don't fight today are the battles that your kids are going to have to fight later on. And so all I would say is it's hard, but it's so important, because if you do it, your kids don't have to fight that fight.
Dan, you and Daz are wired the same, so probably really easy for you guys to come up with a family mission statement. What about for all of us, if we're just regular people like us, and how do we come up with how we want our heritage to be? What kind of questions do we need to ask? How do we kind of put that on a brain dump on paper to start to pray through it?
Yeah, there's a number of ways that you can do it. I think the best way is just, what do you want to be remembered for? You know, like if it sounds really morbid, and I really understand that, but like, what do you want people to say at your funeral one day? You know, I think I remember just there was I went to a funeral one day, and this everyone just, whoever spoke, it was like he just loved others. He just loved others, and everyone just felt that. And I was like, that's as simple as it needs to be. Yeah. You know, it's just, this is who I am. This is who God's called me to be, is just to love others. So all I would say is, what is it that you want to be remembered